What's going on, guys? Jim from iagoffroad, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we are back to the shop after a crazy week of putting some suspension and eye-line parts on both the 2-door and 4-door. We took this thing on the beach. We took this thing to Roush Creek where, we just destroyed these things. They are dirty as can be, and I'll tell you what, we had a problem with the 2.7, which we're gonna be looking into today. As far as the alternator and the charging system kind of went down on us out on the trail. I hear that that's an extremely common problem, so we're gonna tear into that today and see if we can't get some answers on why that happens and see if there's something that we could do about it. On top of that, these things are just destroyed. We hit all kinds of rocks and all kinds of everything there. So we are gonna be getting these things a little bit cleaned up, getting them on a lift, seeing what we've kind of done to them, seeing where all the scratches and dents and bumps are, and if we can kind of assess this whole thing. So let's get to work. We're gonna get them cleaned up on the lift. Let's go. Well, it's definitely not clean, but it's clean enough to get into the shop without making everybody angry. So let's move on over to the 2-door. I'll tell you, Krista told us all this stuff we need to go off-road, but I think the number one thing you need is a power washer. Okay, all in all, not that bad. We got a couple of good hits right here on the front control arm, and it looks like maybe some scrapes on the lower control arm hardware. Kind of to be expected. These hang a little bit lower now that we did the spacer kit. We got some pretty hard impacts here on this core support, which I got a good feeling I know where that came from. Luckily on the 2-door, since we had the modular bumper, we also have the gas tank protector, and man, take a look at this. Good thing we had it, because it looks like we took some hits. We got a couple of bends here, a ton of scrapes. This thing probably saved us out there more than we know. Other than that, we got a couple of impacts here. Luckily, this is all boxed in, so I think it's pretty structurally sound. And then as we get to the rear of the vehicle, man, with these lower mounts here, we took some pretty good carnage there. We tapped the rear diff, I know, once or twice, but other than that, man, I'm telling you, I think it did pretty well. I think that's the majority of our damage, other than the alternator, which I think we're gonna take off now and see if we can disassemble it and see what happens. Okay, so we're about to pull the alternator on the 2.7, maybe take it apart, bench test it, see what kind of voltage it puts out, and let's get to going. Is out of the car. It's definitely been submerged. We have a lot of debris in the back half of it, but like I said, we'll bench test it, see if it puts out any voltage, and if it doesn't, then we'll start taking it apart and see what's going on. Okay, so before we get this thing going, I'm probably gonna need a hand to actually spin the alternator while we test this thing out, so give me just a second. Ready to rock?
Yep.
You want to tap down on that while I hold this? Yep.
Now that we have a good idea of what happened to the two-door, let's check out the four-door and, you know, assess the damage. All right, got a nice little hit on our guard here, but at least on the front, it looks like that extra 2 inches of clearance from having the 37s. I mean, I think that saved us. All right, I kind of take it back. It looks like we took a few whacks as we get further back onto the vehicle, but I mean, this is all bent up, luckily replaceable, so that shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, it's all bent up, but that's what you get. Here's where that gas tank skid plate really comes into handy. Even with the additional ground clearance of the 37s, I mean, we can see that this thing's a little bit torn up. Like, we definitely made some contact here, and we're lucky that we didn't puncture this gas tank. Now, once we get to the rear of the car, I mean, these lateral link mounts took some hits. Boy, like, this thing is pretty torn up, and if we look over to the other side, I mean, this is all smashed up. I know that we took a couple of hits back here, and that makes a lot of sense. But once we start getting further to the rear, it looks like our coilover lower mounts are definitely twisted and all scraped up. I mean, some of the hardware here is pretty marred up, and it looks like we twisted on a lateral link as well. It looks like the rear diff's a little bit scraped up, even more on the four-door than the two-door. Oh man, this four-door took some hits, but we were out there to do that and see what this thing is made of, and quite frankly, I think it did pretty well. I'm super glad we didn't puncture the tank, but other than that, most of this stuff is relatively fixable, relatively easy, so I think we made it out pretty good. After taking a look at all the damage on both the two-door and four-door, I am super impressed on how both of these Broncos fared on our Roush Creek trip. So, if you guys are super interested in the things that we did this week, you're definitely going to want to hit that like and subscribe and make sure you stay up to date on all of our new and latest content. So like always, we'll catch you on the next one.